Hi guys, my name's James. It's another exciting episode of The Ought. Today I've got my good friend Josh in. I'll give him a chance to introduce himself and explain, uh, basically kind of give you an idea of what kind of Christian he is. I am going to be the non-believer uh, of this thing. But what we decided to do was have a Bible study between a non-believer and a Christian. And unlike a lot of the conversations that are out there, we actually really like each other. We're good friends, and we're not intending to dunk on one another or to belittle one another. So you won't catch any snide remarks from me, at least, and I'm pretty sure Josh isn't going to do it either. So no low jabs, nothing under the table. Because I've seen other conversations where someone's always trying to dunk on the other, even in the context of, "Oh, we're good friends." You know,
Well, yeah, it's just that whole mentality of I'm right.
yeah,
Like, you know what I'm saying? You're right, I'm right. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. And
so
I've got to
it's just
win.
like, no, I'm right though.
Yeah.
No, but I'm right though.
Yeah. I hear what you're trying to say, but I'm right, you're dumb.
But right.
But I love you anyway. You'll eventually come to my side of
You're
thinking.
right.
So we were kind of joking about like what is our goals and what is our interest in this. So for me as the non-believer, it's connecting with our ancestors. When we ask who's the author of the Old Testament, in my way of thinking, it's we're interacting with a multitude of authors from maybe 900 BCE or BC, depending on, I don't play the semantics games on before Christ or before Common Era debate. Whatever terminology you want to use is perfectly fine.
I was wondering, what does that mean?
Oh yeah, CE, Common Era, and it was because they wanted to de-religious, but as I think Neil deGrasse Tyson was like, it was created by Jesuit Christians, so I'm gonna give them the due. They invented it, so let's So I still use AD and um, uh, BC, before Christ, after death, in my writing. So I think it's appropriate to just give at least homage to the religious. So I have no problems with it. But for me, the writings come from a multitude of writings or a multitude of authors. But I do know classically it's ascribed to Moses. Moses wrote the 5 books of the Torah, is classically who it's the authorship is assigned to. I have my reasons why I don't believe that. That's going to stem from critical scholarship. But in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of a moot point, right? Like,
to be honest, I have no idea who wrote Genesis.
Yeah.
I know that Moses wrote a lot of the books of the Old Testament, but who actually really did not. I mean, there's not really any way to for sure know exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, it's just the whole of like, when you talk about like Moses or Noah, we always think of it like just Moses. You know what I'm saying? Like there was just Moses.
Yeah.
Nobody else around. And it's like, no. Moses had other people around him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there were other people that were following Moses that he was, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how do we not know that, some of them just knew how to write like Moses, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. They weren't famous, but Moses was, or however you want to, however, whatever. But like, yeah. And like you said, that's a moot point. It's not really.
Yeah. It's even if, let's say Moses wrote it, right? Let's just presuppose it. For me, I'm fine with that because we could both agree that Moses lived at the very minimum over 2,000 years ago. Yeah. Even if he died and then Jesus was born the next day, we would still say the man comes from 2,000 years ago, right?
Right, yeah.
So just like when I'm like in awe of reading Marcus Aurelius, right? And I'm like, wow, this guy lived hundreds of years ago. This is incredible.
Right.
I'm communicating in a way with somebody who's long dead, who lived in a world of horses and the Roman Empire was still strong.
Yep.
What did that look like? What would a Rome 2,000 years ago look like? And
Yeah.
wow,
Across the world.
yeah, so like for me, it's still communing with our ancestors, so even if it was Moses, I would still be like, wow, I'm communicating, with a man that lived at a minimum over 2,000 years ago. And I don't think that humans have evolved physically
Right.
from the times of Moses to now. So that means there's a human being or human beings from thousands of years ago that are writing these stories, these myths, these truths as they saw it.
Right.
And we're reading how they resolved a lot of their dilemmas, like we were talking about before we click start. I was like, look, the story of Job is, why do bad things happen to good people? The fall is, why is there just bad stuff in general? Why do
Right.
bad things happen? Period. The fall. Job, why do bad things happen to good people? Job. There you go. These are people that are interacting with the problem of divine hiddenness thousands of years ago,
Yeah.
so just from a feeling that angst, like, no one who is perfectly happy and joyful ever contemplated the problem of evil. Like,
Right.
usually it's like, my grandfather got bone cancer, he was a good man, he was really, faithful, and he died in a lot of pain.
Right.
And I don't understand why, an all powerful, all knowing, all loving God would allow something like that to happen.
Right.
And, and then, some, like, to me, it's people in pain asking that question, like, why does this happen to good people?
Right.
Cliff Connectley, I don't know if you know who he is. I can tell when I listen to him. He talks about, I want to say his niece, and I apologize if I'm wrong, but a family member, a young family member, she died in a car accident.
Yeah.
And you can tell that he has his faith and his answers, and it helps him. But you can
I've heard
feel the
him. Yeah.
pain. Like, you can feel the pain, right?
I've watched
Like, these
videos and
questions
stuff like
aren't
that.
asked from a place of happy-go-lucky joy. Like,
Yeah.
these are questions asked like from a place of pain. And I think these answers are not, well, yeah, let's say a man called Adam. Yeah, Adam. And let's say a woman called Eve. Yeah, Eve. I don't think they just arbitrarily pooped
No.
out some answer. I think that our ancestors uh slowly developed, these stories, these myths, these legends, these whatever term you want to use,
Right.
these scriptures, let's use that for the
Yeah.
religious, I'm sorry, to answer these questions. That's how I view it. And I think that that's where it came from. So I don't actually think that the people who wrote the Bible were nefarious, or was like intentionally just making stuff up. I think these are long, very old stories. Some of it come from like Babylonian myths. Some of it is I think authentic creativity. But I mean, we can always just go and say, like, back and back and back. Like, at some point, somebody had to originate these
Right.
tales. And so I think that, like we were talking about metaphysics, I don't think Adam and Eve are historical figures, but I think metaphysically, we can say that Adam and Eve represents first men, first women. We don't have their names. We know they existed, through archaeological records and through kind of like some common sense, I think, readings of the Bible. Like, surely, like, who was Cain afraid of? Like, there's other people, but the Bible never explicitly goes out of its way to explain where these people came from and why should
Yeah.
Cain be afraid of it. So we acknowledge that there are other people right after the fall,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
yeah.
So
There's a gap.
yeah,
I've always kind of thought it was kind of weird how there's only like certain people are mentioned, because I think in the Bible it's Adam and Eve have like what, 30 kids.
who I'm so
Adam and Eve, they have like
Adam and
what,
Eve.
30 kids.
Oh,
Uh,
I don't know how many kids they I know they have uh Cain and Abel, right? That's the most
Right.
obvious answer. And
Because a lot of people
um
believe it's just Cain and Abel, but I mean, it clearly it wasn't. They might have been the last two. You know what I'm saying? Like their last two kids.
yeah. I This is the list of descendants of Adam when God created humankind. He made them in the likeness of God, male and female. He created them, and he blessed them and named them humankind when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. The days of Adam after he became the father of Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus, all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. When Seth, who lived. So we just know he had many sons and daughters. I think that's.
But we know for sure he had Seth, Cain, and Abel.
Yes.
Okay.
And, and then we also, obviously have the whole incest problem to kind of work through. I know I remember seeing Cliff Knechtle have a conversation where the person was talking to him about Cain, and I thought it was very odd when Cliff got really upset about it because he was like, it's not a history book. It's not meant to be a history book. You're focusing, like, I think that's what he was trying to say, is you're focused on the wrong things. But I do think that it is a valid question to ask, like, I think one of the challenges is if we're saying to ourselves that Adam and Eve sinned against God, and part of punishing Adam and Eve was to also punish their line.
Yeah.
The fall is, because it's the whole idea of God is infinite, man is finite. If you sin against an infinite being, there is now an infinite gulf. How do you redress an infinite mistake or an infinite,
Right.
So by punishing all of Adam and Eve's descendants in this way, we can maybe redress some of the balance. I suppose is the logic, is the only way I at least can intellectualize it. And then you know, the issue is with other people that are not of Adam and Eve's line.
Yeah.
Were they in the garden as well? Does everybody, like, was there a bunch of people in the garden and basically over time people slowly sinned against God and were ousted? And you know what I mean? Like, where do these people come from that aren't from the Adam and Eve line? I think is a valid question, because if we say no, it was just Adam and Eve in the garden and there's these other people, does that mean that God is snapping people into existence post fall? Are don't those people also suffer the effects post fall world? And
We're,
what is the
we're
punishment purpose of those people suffering in a post fall world? Right? Does that question make sense? Was that, or am I just like batshit crazy and like off in the weeds? Does that make sense?
well, I'm trying to figure out where does it say that Adam and Eve weren't the only two people, or the first
No,
first
yeah,
people?
yeah. I'm saying that. We're skipping
Oh
into
yeah,
the
we're
fall.
skipping a good bit.
Yeah, let's. Hey guys, we're teasing next episode. So
Hey.
yeah, what we're gonna
Well,
do is
that's always been okay.
but
So
yeah, maybe that's just where we start.
since we got the bag
I
open,
know the
right?
bag's
Right,
open.
the bag is open. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
unbag the bag. Like, okay, so my thing has always been, me and my dad have talked about this, and it's like, okay, if you read when Cain killed Abel, it said that Cain went off to a far land, right? And he
Um,
met and married, and that's where the Shemites come from, right? Or the
it's I remember it's that they name a city in it.
no,
Cain knew his wife, and so where we're at is Genesis 4:17, beginnings of civilization. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch, and he built a city and named it Enoch after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mahujael. I'm sorry for butchering and mispronounces, and Mahujael, and the father of Methushael, and Methushael, the father of Lamech. Lamech took two wives. The name of the one was Adah, and the name of the other was Zillah. And so we get the lineage of Cain. And then the Lord said, yep. So Genesis 4 is about the murder of Abel by Cain. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and born in Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next, she bore his brother Abel. Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord offerings. Why are you angry, and why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, Cain said to his brother, let it to the field. And yep, then he just killed him. And then I think that they don't, other than we know that Adam and Eve have many sons and daughters, and he lived, almost 1,000 years. And then we go to Cain. He, and they give us the line, the line of Cain.
I'm not my brother's keeper.
Yeah, well, I'm not my brother's keeper. Interestingly enough, I think when I read Genesis 4, an interesting thing, I actually sometimes lament with Cain, actually, which on face value is absurd, right? Like, I mean, Cain murders his son Abel, and that's a monstrous act. But I think if you truly knew God in the way that Cain and Abel knew God, right? So, like for us, like the problem divine hiddenness is a problem. For them, they walked with God. They could go and visit God. So they had a relationship with God that is definitively different than our relationship. They don't question whether God exists because they can just go and see God. At no point is it like, is God real? They know.
Oh yeah,
There's
yeah,
a
yeah.
big difference. It's like Adam and Eve.
They
They
know for
know
sure.
God for sure exists. There's no doubt. Like that, I'm sitting on a chair. I'm confident the chair exists because I don't pull it out and go, oh, I hope it supports me today. It might just fall through and it's potentially imaginary. Like I know, like I sit down full confidence the chair exists. Can anybody today say that truly about, belief in God? I don't know. I like everybody, even like Cliff Connectley is like, I have doubts, but effectively I remember why I believe, but I don't doubt this chair exists.
Right.
Right. Like, so there is a little bit of, when we talk about like Jordan Peterson, the Jubilee, belief is, truly pound the table, this is, 100% absolute conviction that this is a true thing or a real thing. Well, I have that for a chair, but I don't have that for, metaphysical anything, whether it be God or, could a perfect triangle exist in my mind or not?
Right.
Those are all kind of, maybes and potentialities,
You just made me think of something. If you just if you read the New Testament, right? Nowhere in there does it talk about God's or Jesus's conversations with anybody where anybody asks about, hey, how many kids did Adam and Eve have?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, did Moses really have to do all that? Like, they don't, right? Because Jesus is talking about his father, and he's and all that. So I think Cliff has a point. That's kind of going back to your point.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So I think Cliff has a point that a lot of this it is just getting in the weeds.
Yeah.
And I think that there are going to be people that are going to just be like, okay, well, what about this? And what about
Yeah.
you can hunt all day for a reason not to believe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think anybody's like, you know why I don't believe in God? Because it doesn't tell me how many kids Adam and Eve had.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So I kind of understand Cliff, but I don't. I as a Christian, especially if somebody's asking me about the Bible, I I I I don't know how I feel about someone getting agitated like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you see it as just nothing, but this person's asking you whether that person is asking you a legitimate question or not. Doesn't matter. It's everybody that's around you that's watching you because Cliff is a very watched guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and so it again, it's not exactly whatever. It's what people are going to see.
Yeah.
And then that might keep somebody from asking Cliff another question, or a non-believer might watch and be like, I know a Christian friend, but man, I ain't gonna ask him that. He's just gonna say I'm stupid or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think a lot of times, and Cliff is a good example of this. You can't always just go by that person, right? Because what Cliff sees as inconsequential doesn't matter to him.
Yeah.
It's going to matter to you, right?
Yeah.
And so I think of a lot of people get caught up in, oh man, like there's a lot of people that just follow Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
right? They just follow him, right or wrong, they follow him, right? And a lot of times what happens is those people, they don't listen to any other arguments except for what Jordan has done. And like we were talking about earlier, Jordan has such a way of taking religion and then whatever and just like that,
Yeah.
that unless you're, into that, you're not going to understand what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
I think even if you, to be fair, I
yeah.
think even if you do understand Jordan Peterson, you're still probably like, I'm not sure I understand Jordan Peterson.
Right.
And before we always are going to have a long conversation before we finally hit play. So it's always going to be a little off kiltering. So we were also discussing Jordan Peterson and his Jubilee debate before we started the podcast today. So just keep that in mind. So if you're like, what do they talk? They're not talking about Jordan Peterson. It's because we talked about it before when we were just like talking about the pros and cons of Jordan Peterson.
Well, a lot of people lose themselves.
Yeah.
When you follow somebody like that, you don't question things.
Yeah.
And then you get their mentality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you watch Cliff a lot, and that's, especially if you're like a new believer, you're going to get stuck in whatever ditch you have found.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know? So if you follow that person, which, what else you don't know what else to do, right?
Yeah.
You know, hey, this guy knows what he seems to be talking about. He seems to have he's very nice. Kind of reminds me of the guy that does the voice acting for like How It's Made. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's just got that very he's got a voice you can just listen to.
Yeah.
So, what was I saying?
I don't know. We're already lost. Yeah.
I don't remember what I was saying. But anyway, so I think the best thing is you can follow somebody like Cliff, or you can follow someone like Jordan Peterson or whoever.
Yeah.
But either whether it be religion or philosophy or whatever, you just have to at some point stop and actually go, do I actually believe that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can get lost.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you're driving and you're the driver and the passenger doesn't really know where you're going, but kind of do.
Yeah.
And you're not paying attention and you've been in this conversation and like you missed your exit like 20 miles ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then you gotta all that backtracking, and then you gotta figure out where you went.
Yeah.
I think that because it's just like when you follow a political person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're going to get dragged in to whatever trash they've got or whatever, and then you got to deal with that. And if you're following somebody like that and you don't know how to deal with that pushback like that, you're gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's it's not like Cliff or Jordan is really going in detail about, well, somebody comes at you like this, or they're more or less answering questions philosophically to get people thinking.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was my 2 points.
Yeah.
But one of my things is whether you're listening to this podcast because you're just interested in what we're saying, or whatever the reason is just always do your homework. And although James and I do our homework for the most part, and we try to come in here and give the most accurate information or whatever, got to read for yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that's so nice about the Bible is that it is pretty accessible at this point. If you can watch this, you can go on BibleHub.com.
Yep.
And stay away from the other hub, guys. But you can go on BibleHub.com. And they use the King James version, I think, quite extensively, and they have a few others. I do prefer the NSRV. And yes, anytime I talk about theology, I will have the Bible open, available. So when you saw me kind of going, just so you know, it's the Bible, and that's what I'm looking up, because I do want to make sure that uh, that I'm not. I find a lot of times, even the most well-meaning, and even like Cliff Connectley, who knows the Bible,
Yep.
like he's got it, I would say like 90-95% memorized.
Yep.
But the issue is that sometimes when you're having a very nuanced conversation, that 5% not correctness
Really means it.
can make a massive difference in how you accept or read certain things. So I always struggle to have a theological conversation and not have my Bible around me. I actually make it a point to always have it near me if I'm going to engage. So when I'm in YouTube videos and somebody's making a theological point, you know, I will stop and go read what they're talking about, and sometimes read the whole chapter
Yeah.
and really try to make sure that I'm understanding what they're saying. Because a lot of times we see, and this is going to be by atheists, by non believers, by truth seekers, by Christians, uh, there is a lot of misuse of the Bible,
Yeah, there is.
by everybody, because a lot of times we're trying to use it to
Proof of
either
point.
we're trying to attack it, and
Yeah.
so we're taking one sentence, and sometimes it is out of context, and sometimes we're misusing on both sides
Mm.
certain elements, and really we don't have, we're doing a disservice by doing that. I do agree that some compatibilist efforts kind of miss the theological point that the writer's going for, and we'll get into that when especially when we start getting into the gospel accounts of the New Testament.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that it is. I think that if somebody asks you a question, there's always tone, and there's always kind of like what if I like literally, so we'll talk a little bit about politics. Um, I cringe when the question, "What is your definition of a woman?" comes up, because it's not a genuine question anymore. It's just a political attack. It's not, I genuinely want to hear what you have to say. Like when Charlie Kirk went to Cambridge to debate, um, he asked the question. Tilly gave a response, and Tilly was the blonde female debater. Which she was that either way, you can't miss her. She was the only one up there. I think that was blonde female, also named Tilly, but she gave an answer that I thought was appropriate. And Charlie Kirk just kind of, as my memory goes, said, can a woman have an Adam's apple? Right? Because it's not actually a conversation about what is a woman, right? It's really about trying to just highlight an absurdity, which is a little bit of a political thing, but I think if you're trying to have a genuine, honest discussion about that, like I think everybody can concede that the word adult goes into any definition of woman. And when we say what is an adult, you know, uh, we start going into some interesting or potentially weird paths. What is an adult? Well, an adult is, maybe I define it as 16. Maybe I define it at 21. Maybe I define it when the brain stops developing at 24, 25, right? I understand, like when we've had this conversation, you're like, James, when I was 16, 17, I had to have a job and I had to do these things. I was trying to
Yeah.
be emancipated from my parents because I was effectively being an adult at that age,
Yeah.
you know, and so I hear that, and so I think it is a gray area when we talk about things like what is adult, and we can get really caught up in these divides. But I think that in those discussions, if you're unable to at least have a little bit of grace in you to say, hey, I hear you. I hear that there is some, no matter how minute, but there is at least some mental aspect to that question. Then it's no longer you're so absurd for thinking this way.
Right.
Then it's like, I disagree with you. I can live with a Christian that says, James, I think that God made us in a divine image. And I think that, changing that, is a like you're effectively graffitiing. I don't know how to say that correctly, but you're effectively applying graffiti to a religious site. Like it's almost profane what you're doing.
Right.
And I could be like, okay, fine. I can kind of get behind that. But I will say this. I think that if that is how you're going to do it, you need to be equal in your condemnation of that. I would say that means no piercings, no tattoos. Like if you do that, if that's your mentality, then those are my expectations as well. Like I think you ought be saying as well, like, well, piercings, tattoos are also profaning the divine image of God. And and I noticed you have some tattoos, and so I hope I'm not offending you. But I think that's at least a valid
No.
counter to that discussion. And I think that all I'm trying to do is highlight a nuance,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can still have your hard oughts. You can still say, no, I think this is immoral and wrong. But if you can at least give just enough grace to say, but I kind of see your point. I still disagree with you, but
Yeah.
I at least grasp what you're trying to say, and it's not so absurd. Then we can move away from this, libtard, insult, or, whatever the conservative nickname is. I'm sure they have one,
No, libtard.
well, yeah, there's libtard for liberals, but I conservatard, like, I don't know what you say, like Nazi. I don't. Everybody gets called a Nazi. I don't know, like what. I don't. There's not a good conservative jab like libtard quite or demon rats. Conservatives have the edge. Like they come up with the best insults. I don't know. I'm just like I don't know. I don't talk like that. I don't know, but
Well, the conservative joke is always the left don't know how to meme. So,
you know what? I'm going to tell you that is the most accurate thing.
And for some reason,
yeah,
Democrats don't seem to understand memes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
One of my a guy that I've known and I consider him a good buddy. He's very left, but man, I share memes or something. He don't get it. It's all of a sudden it's a defense, or you know what I'm saying? It's like it's a meme.
Yeah.
And he's like, he just keeps babbling on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's a meme.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it, but clearly this isn't actual.
Right.
Thing.
It's overall like all political cartoons are ultimately a ad absurdum attack, and not to say attack, but it's just trying to show, like, if we were to follow this logic to its logical conclusion ad absurdum, I'm just trying to highlight how ridiculous this is.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that is extremely effective in getting your point across. If it's kind of like, I think communism, like we can, neither one of us like communism.
No.
We could use, like, we can make really in-depth philosophical conversations about why we don't like communism, right. I feel like the death of motivation, I think would be a very serious philosophical argument towards communism.
I think that's actually, that's probably like the main one.
Yeah, I think I agree. That's like, when I think of why I don't like communism, it's the death of motivation. It's like, look, I appreciate in the Star Trekian universe that they all were like kumbaya for the good of mankind. And I'm like, I'm glad that humanity has evolved past tribalism. Genuinely.
Awesome.
I don't think we can rational ourselves past tribalism in a true sense. Like, I think we're always going to have some tribal dysfunction in what Homo sapiens, which is what we are, I think, right? So
It's either Homo sapien or it's Homo sapien sapien.
yeah, it's a double something somewhere. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I bet I just fucking let me.
Oh, sure, it's still going.
Oh yeah. So last time we talked for like 5 hours and we recorded only the first 15 minutes. And it's because we were like somewhere I brought a screen up and it instantly stopped recording. And we just kept reading and talking and having a good time. And we closed finally. We finished it up like that was a great talk. And we look over and it said 15 minutes. And I was like, we've been talking for hours. It has not been 15 minutes. So this is take 2.
Yeah.
And
so now we have a permanent fear.
yes, a permanent fear of bringing anything up on the computer.
At any moment,
yeah,
we're going to realize we've been talking for nothing.
Yeah. But the good news is we like each other, so we had a good conversation, regardless of the fact that we didn't record it. So it worked out.
I think getting back to your point, though, I definitely think that what is a woman?
Yeah.
Which
it can be a valid question.
As a conservative, right? As a conservative who I would say I was a Republican for probably up to like the past couple years, for being honest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because when you're brought up in that mindset, and it's just like the whole not questioning the government, and it's really my dad who kind of made me start looking at that, like it's the absurdity, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's not okay to grow poppy seed or anything, but it's completely legal to have all the opiate you want, right? It's a one.
I'm not familiar enough with that to.
Or
I'm willing to just concede because I don't know.
Or like the weed debate.
Weed debate, yeah.
So you can say, oh well, I'll tell my dad like, well, in some states it's legal. Yeah, well the government hasn't said it is. I was like, okay, but how many people have died from weed? None that we know of, right? Yeah, there's gonna be people that fell off of stuff, that did things that's stupid. Same thing with drunks. Okay, but at the same time, it's like, okay, but how many people are dying every year on opioids?
Oh yeah.
It's a plant.
Yeah.
That the government says is okay. So saying that, when you say what is a woman, it is, I think it's the point of absurdity. Like, are you going to give me an absurd question? Like, are you going to tell me just like, I don't know, it's whatever you think, it's whatever you feel like you are that day or time? I think what conservatives are doing is you ask that question, you get that stupid answer, and then it's like, this person is no longer worth my time.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, whether it's somebody's asking you about the Bible or, whatever, it's
Yeah. No, I think, in a honest discussion, if you were to say, James, what is your definition of, because I trust you,
right,
I would be willing to answer the question.
Okay.
But if I was to, I have seen it weaponized, I suppose, and it's not philosophically honest anymore. I've seen young men go up to any liberal conversation where a liberal is just trying to have a conversation with people.
Right.
And it's, what's your definition of a woman? And then they take a deep breath in and they vomit, onto the microphone. And the person that's like trying, I'm like, it could be a liberal up there just saying, guys, our farmers are losing their farms. We've got to figure out a solution to help them. And then somebody just wants to be like, I want to own the libtards today. Goes up to the microphone. What's your definition of a woman? And you have about that much time to try to get an answer out before he's like, you're all fucking retarded. You're stupid and I hate libtards. And you're just like, can we get back to farmers? Like, could you stop projecting on me, bro? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I think there's a difference.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with religion.
Yeah,
Whether you're Christian or you're not. It's how you ask the question, and you know what? It truly goes back to willing. I'm not. I would say people aren't able because we're all able to have this conversation.
Yes, yes. We can have a respectful discourse about what is the definition of woman,
It's
what
just
is the
nobody's
Bible.
willing to.
It's just it's because I think we're living in an age of Christian destroys atheist.
Yeah,
No atheist can answer these questions. It's
yeah.
this, you
Oh,
guys are so absurd.
yeah.
This whole platform no longer exists.
Right.
And I'm like, the problem of evil has been literally talked about for thousands of years. And yet you have the answer that solves it. It's suddenly resolved. No one need not ever ask this question again. The problem of divine hiddenness has been perfectly resolved. No one need not question again because the Christian has an answer. Like, or anybody. It's not just Christians. I don't want to just be
Yeah.
Muslims
Oh
have
no.
answers. All deists have answers. Buddhists have answers. Hindus have answers. The Mayans back in the day had answers. Like
Right.
I live in the Bible Belt. So for my Christian friends who are listening and you're like, why is he always going on about Christians? It's because it's the only people around in the religion game. So that's all
Yeah.
I'm going to talk
It's
about.
either Christians or atheists.
Yeah, and it's in the Bible Belt, it's mostly
Yeah.
Christians.
You
It's
might
not
find
there's
it.
not a lot of us
You
non-believers
might
out
find
there.
it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, because I mean, you're probably more willing to. You're probably gonna come upon a Muslim before you would an atheist.
yeah. And we do have a Muslim and we have a Jewish sect here in Morganton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yes, you will run into them
Yeah.
before you'll run into
Yeah.
me.
And I think too, though, it's because as a Christian, I think that people have people have had this mentality of winning souls,
Yeah.
right? Just like the Catholics did with the whole. Granted, they took it a little far, right?
Just a
Just a
smidge for
smidge.
a small period of time. They were a
A
little. Yeah.
year or two,
No
they
one expects the Spanish Inquisition is a joke for a reason.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
Took it a little too far.
for a couple years, some people kind of, whatever. But like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I had that moment again.
I know, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
Well, they
like,
but when we talk about taking it too far, but I mean that is the history of mankind. We've always taken, like sometimes we forget to give grace,
yeah,
as and I will say, like, obviously I like really saying giving grace.
mhm,
I know that this is really kind of religious terminology. Uh, as a non-believer, I don't divorce myself of religious terms.
right,
I like the word sin to refer to doing things we ought not. I think
yeah,
that it bridges a lot of gaps because when we're discussing things, the goal isn't to talk past each other or to descend into, I demand secular terminology, and you say, well, I demand religious terminology. And we just endlessly talk back, past each other, trying to force the other to use our language. I think that's unproductive. So
and
I would.
I think that's what a lot of Christians have done for a long time to atheists. Is what now I remember is, and I think the reason why atheists have been so quiet, it's such a stigmatism. There's like such a what do you call
I
that?
know what you're talking. I know what you're
Yeah,
trying to say. I don't think stigmatism is correct. I think stigmatism's eyeball
yeah.
things. But it's such
Such a
a.
stigmatism. Is it
It's a.
stigmatism or mustig? I don't know.
No, no,
Anyway,
we're very. Someone's gonna
real close
blow
to
us
the
up in chat.
word.
I know what the word is, but it's not coming to me. It's on the tip of my tongue.
So yeah,
But either way, yeah. I will tell you that when I first told you that I was a non-believer, uh, I actually experienced fear when I said that.
really.
Yeah, I actually experienced fear because I
I
feel such a social pressure to say that I'm Christian, and I won't lie. I have long been in the closet on being a non-believer because um, the crazy thing is in Jordan Peterson's debate, in Jubilee debate, he says, you live on Judeo-Christian morality, but you don't believe in the underlying values, or you don't believe in the underlying story. Sorry. And I remember thinking, and your point is like, what a weird
Yeah.
claim,
Yeah.
like I actually slightly disagree with the notion that the West is Judeo-Christian. I think we are Greco-Roman with a sprinkling of Judeo-Christian, but I don't think, but that's a nuance. It's
Well,
okay if for anybody to
well,
disagree and say it's a little bit
I
of,
well, I think
but I think we can agree it's a mixture of these cultures.
what sort of like to me as a Christian, Judeo-Christian doesn't make any sense because Judeo would mean Judaism, right? Jew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But
But it's to refer to the Abrahamic religion in its
yeah,
entirety.
but that would also be Muslim
Yeah.
because the Muslims are also Abrahamic.
Correct.
So people don't say Judeo, Muslim, Christian values.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got you. Yeah.
It's Christian values, and the only reason why I say that is there is such a divide between Jews and Christians, just like Christians and Muslims, or Muslims and Jews, right?
I can see what you're saying. Yeah.
That as a Christian, like Judeo,
Yeah.
like
Well, I guess I would say
because
like
we don't say we get all of our values from the Jews.
no, we don't like. Yeah, a Christian would say like I guess a Jew would. I'm sorry, a Hebrew, a Jew. I just want to make sure
I don't
if
know
there is a
exactly.
Jew or a Hebrew listening, I'm trying to be respectful. If I'm saying a slur or something, just
Yeah,
call me out.
we don't know.
It's out of ignorance, not out of hatred. But I would say that I guess if you were a Hebrew or a person from Israel, Israelite, you would say we're just Judeo or Judaist. I
Yeah,
don't even know how
that
to say the word
exactly.
anymore. You would just
Because
say
you
this
wouldn't say
is
Christian.
Jewish foundation, and
Right.
I suppose but I suppose like the reason I would say Judeo-Christian is because the Ten Commandments comes out of the Old Testament. It doesn't come out of the New.
That is true, but
And I think that in order to be like, you would say that there's a new covenant, so the old law need not be followed, but that doesn't mean that like, did Jesus believe in the Old Testament? Right? Did Jesus say like did he say, hey, look, this Old Testament writings you have are just wrong. That was human made. I'm here to give you the correct one. Or was he someone who was like, no, it's true.
right.
But you just misunderstood it. Because that's how I always felt. Like I always felt like he was saying, like, he wasn't saying like, what was it? Before Abraham, I was, or I
Yeah.
am. He wasn't like, he's not saying Abraham didn't exist. He
Right.
was making a different claim.
You got a
So
point.
I think that's why I would say, you ought say it's still Judeo-Christian, because there are some, while the old law is no longer practiced by, so you're not expected to keep the law, uh, like kosher,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Just
Right. Right.
just to make sure that we're kind of tracking. You're still like the Ten Commandments is from Moses.
Mhm.
When we do like it's not saying the Passover didn't happen. It's just
Right. Right.
it's just a it's kind of like you just have an addition,
Right.
kind of like you could think of Mormons have an addition. You don't accept the addition, I think. And I mean, because you didn't say you were a Mormon, you said you're a Baptist, so I'm assuming you don't accept the Mormons edition. I can't. I don't want to say anything.
I don't want to say it sounds sketchy that only one dude could read
Yeah.
these tablets that nobody else saw. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no,
It takes a lot of faith.
I struggled to read the Book of Mormon. I really did. I tried to read it, and I couldn't make myself. But I don't want to be disrespectful. So I just couldn't get into it. I tried. I think I read like the first 5-6 pages, and I was like, I can't, and I just put it down and I stopped. I just couldn't do it.
I had this college dude when I was in high school. I had a college guy trying to explain Mormonism. He's like, we're all gods, and I'm just like,
I don't know about that.
what?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? He goes, oh yeah, there's multiple gods and this, and I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know if he was trying to teach you more. I've heard some Mormon apologists. I've never heard that. I remember it's like the angel Malachi, and that Jesus came to North America and that there was this weird Indian war, and I just was like, what? I just couldn't, like, I remember just being like, it hits a point where I just was like, I think every fiber of my being was like, I want to read this so I can take it seriously, but at no point could I take it seriously. Like, I could not make
Yeah.
myself take it seriously, and I can take the Bible seriously
Hmm.
in a way that I could not take the Book of Mormon
Right.
seriously. So it's not. I don't know how to say that. If there's a upset Mormon hearing those words, I'm sorry. I just don't know how to say it more bluntly and more politely. I genuinely just tried to read it and I just couldn't. I just was like, it just triggered things in me that I was just like, I just couldn't take it seriously.
I don't
I
think
think
that.
that's the best way I
I
could
mean,
say
I
it.
don't think that's bad. I mean, because I mean, I wouldn't be upset if somebody was like, "Man, I tried to read that Bible and like after Genesis, I
Yeah,
was just
talking
like, what
snakes. I
is
can't. I
this?
can't take talking
Is a
snakes seriously.
yeah, like what?
So
Uh,
if I can find a Mormon in our area that I will say this. I will say this about Mormons. Very nice
Very
people.
nice people. Yes.
Gosh, they are such nice people.
Yeah.
I my second deployment had a lot of Mormons,
Yeah.
and I actually got a dressing down because the South Park episode about Mormons had come out, and I was like dum 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 dum, and I didn't realize I was like, and when I was a young man, I was a much more arrogant person, and so you're seeing a more refined version of me. Yeah, some of you might still accuse me of it, but I'll live with it. I was a much, at least I'll say this, I was a much more arrogant person then, and I remember I was just going off on Mormonism because I was just like, I genuinely was like, I'm pretty respectful of all religions, but and Mormons, man. I was like, I just couldn't. I genuinely, when I was like, man, I can't make myself read the Book of Mormon. I'm serious. I just was like, who believes this stuff? And so now
Mormons.
I know Mormons. I've seen there is a Mormon apologist that I've been starting to watch online, because he takes it seriously, and I can hear him out because he has a good way of kind of describing it and trying to talk to people about it, because he asks some very basic questions that I think are actually really useful. He's like, do you think God can still be agentic? And I think almost everybody who believes in God is like, yeah, of course God can still be agentic. He's like, can God still perform miracles? Yeah, I think, yeah, I think God can still perform miracles. And he's like, okay, well, with the whole golden plates, right? And you're like, only one guy could see it. Well, actually, they actually had more. There's more written testimony from eyewitnesses about the golden plates, because it wasn't just John Smith that could see them.
Oh,
Like, he
okay.
showed it to like his inner circle, like, which was like 13 people or something like that, and they all have written affidavits saying, yeah, that it's real, they do exist, and yeah, this is legit. So there's actually better attestation for the golden plates than there are for the resurrection. And he kind of goes into it, and I was like, okay, and some people that I respect in the online space, which is very rare. I understand the internet is the wild west of insanity.
Yeah.
But there are some people that I've come to think, hey, this is a person that, while I may not agree with everything they say, I can actually stand behind them a little bit and say, okay, I at least am willing to hear them out. And this guy has a very rational kind of approach to teaching Mormonism. He says, like, that Mormons are like, who we're not recruiting. We're not recruiting atheists. We're not recruiting. The people that are coming to Mormonism are typically Christians.
Right.
And it's just like, look, if you already accept all this, we're just asking to accept slightly more. And it's all predicated on the idea that, do you not believe that miracles can still happen? Do you not believe that God is still agentic, or do you think he's just checked out? And I think most Christians are like, no, God is still agentic, and no, I think
I think
so I think
framing the
there's some of that.
questions those ways though are isn't exactly um isn't exactly right. I guess there's another way to put it, but
Okay.
because like asking, okay, like if somebody was asking me, hey, can God still perform miracles? Right. My first question would be, okay, what is considered a miracle?
Yeah, define terms. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Because here's the thing. You can say that was a miracle baby. But if you're God, it is no miracle because You knew it was going to happen, right? Like, if you truly believe, right, it's not a miracle. For me, a miracle is when, you know, you, somebody's like, hey, you've got, the doctor's like, hey, you've got 6 months to live. You've got this mass in your chest. You got 6 months to live. And then, 5 months down the road, whatever, it's like, hey, it's gone, completely gone. We have no idea. To me, that's a miracle,
Yeah.
right? Um, but if you want to be realistic, miracles were performed by Jesus and his disciples. So very select. I mean, there's a very few people that were actually doing miracles. So no, I don't. I wouldn't say that God is still performing miracles because I would have to know. I would have to have a little more information,
Okay. Yeah.
and that's just me being real.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
to me, the fact that they go for Christians, it's kind of one of those things of like, well, if you can get a kid to believe there's Santa Claus, you can get that kid to believe there's Tooth Fairy. Then you can get them to believe there's an Easter Bunny. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, the basis of the question is, do you believe that God can still do this? You go, of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's not like some, like I've never thought of that before.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like you're already there. They've just persuaded you enough to push you in a direction that for the past up until what was that, like the 1800s? John Smith is like 18
Yeah.
something.
Something. Yeah.
So you
I have
mean
to
to
double
tell
check
me
it.
for 1800 and some odd years, the only thing we had was the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. Then all of a sudden, this guy's like, I dug up this, and these 13 people, anybody can write anything on an affidavit.
Yeah.
And you can use this argument for religion as well. Like, well, man, you really believe that a guy could do that, and you really believe that he did that, really? Like, but as a Christian, just kind of, if you were to ask me,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, like I mean, to me, it doesn't make any sense because Jesus talks about the Word is with him and with God, and he is God, he is the Word, and that everything that he done is final. So when the last book of the Bible was wrote, and I believe that was it.
Yeah.
I just don't believe, because there's a lot of people that believe that North America is actually like where Jesus went, and that
And the Mormon.
The
Yeah.
Red
Yeah.
Sea is
Yeah.
actually over there, and all this other stuff, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, man. There's a there's a whole area, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That is still called these things.
Yeah.
Like Golgotha is the place
Yeah.
of the skull. You can go there. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
That's
Their geography is so off they couldn't tell the difference between the Atlantic Ocean and
the Pacific.
the
Yeah.
Red Sea.
And and,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah. I
and
got
to
you.
and to
Yeah,
me, I'm not saying that I know a lot of atheists call Christians stupid. Far be it for me to call somebody stupid,
yeah, no,
right?
yeah,
Man, that's awful far stretch.
yeah,
And I think as a Christian, the fact that somebody can pull you, to me, doesn't actually mean that you actually were a true Christian.
yeah,
Because I think once you have accepted that faith, there is no getting it out. You can shove it down, and you can hide, you can keep it in the closet, but it's always going to be there.
yeah,
And it's always going to bother you, or it's just going to be something. But like
yeah,
I said, 13 people can all sit down on a table and write the same exact affidavit, but from 13 different viewpoints, and it would be all the same.
yeah.
If you read, if you read the New Testament, Mark, Luke,
John.
Matthew, and John, right? 4 books. Those are 4 totally different points of view, right? Same story, 4 totally different points of view.
Yep.
Because what Matthew saw, Mark didn't saw. What Mark saw, John didn't saw. What they saw, Luke didn't see. So that that's my little.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
my little.
No, I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me, I'm never impressed with miracles. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just honestly, any miraculous claims, I'm just kind of like not interested. Um, but I can get behind, love thy neighbor.
Yeah.
If I truly was like, why would I want to love my neighbor? That seems kind of absurd.
Right.
When I was a young guy, that really just didn't make any sense to me. And now that, I'm in my 40s, um, I realized that, um, you know, uh, especially after going to Iraq and Afghanistan, I lost friends. So one of the things that really gets you, um, one of the, what was it? Frank Sinatra sings this song that everybody loves,
Yeah.
for what is a man? That's,
Yeah.
and he says, to say the things that I really need to say. And so, what he's talking about is saying, like, am I so cool? Am I so suave that I just don't need to say these things like "I love you, brother"?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it gay if I give you a hug?
Yeah.
Am I too? Am I don't want to. I don't want to look dumb, and I don't want to look stupid. So I'm not going to do these things. And I realized I was living inauthentically. And I realized that the kind of person I aspire to be is someone who loves their neighbor.
Yeah.
So, I try to, I really do try to think about that. And I think about like, there's a lot of stories in the Bible about hospitality.
Oh yeah, there is.
And I think about like when we talk about the difference between Abraham and Lot, well, I should say when we will eventually get to Abraham and Lot. And there are different ways that they showed hospitality to the angels, that were disguised as men. And I really think about that. I was like, not that I'm really expecting angels to knock on my door, but um, I do think about hospitality in those terms, though. Like, you never know.
Right.
So when we're going to talk a lot about metaphysical, understandings, uh, throughout this podcast. So for me, um, when I read about that, like, it's the thing, like, you don't know what the other person has gone through, and you don't know how bad their day has been, and so, uh, like when Josh comes over, I will always endeavor to make a meal or to feed you, and not to just feed you ramen,
Right.
but I will try to make something or to get something that you're excited to eat, that you
Yeah.
would be like, sweet,
Yeah.
because I feel I have a duty, because if you had like a really bad day, like, I worked retail at some point, and I understand there's going to be bad days working retail. Uh, you're going to have somebody come over, and, it's always about like, well, I don't want to bother you with my feelings. I don't want you to bother. I don't want to unload my crappy day onto you. And especially as men,
Yeah.
right? This is something I think we really struggle with. And so for me, if I can give you a good meal, and if that's all I'm able to provide you, you know I if I can bring just that little bit of joy, a
Yeah.
little bit of that happiness, that's going to have a hopefully, over time, especially, you're going to
Oh yeah.
start to have this positive effect, right? And so, uh when we love our neighbors, I think that, there is something in community. Like, I
Yeah.
think man needs people. We live in this social media world, there's all this connection, and yet we feel more separate than we've ever felt, and I'm like, I I want to, I want when my friends come over, and I want when people come over, that they feel a
Yeah.
sense of community and feel, that love and hospitality. So I think that, especially when you listen to all the nonviolent speakers out there that, try to elicit change through love, I think that I couldn't understand it as a young man,
Mm-hmm.
but now as a, middle-aged man, I hope I have another 40 years in me, but as a middle-aged man, uh I understand love thy neighbor more now than I ever did. And so I don't need to believe Jesus walked on water. I
Right.
don't need to believe that Jesus, healed the leper to just say to myself, it's just a correct viewpoint to think that loving thy neighbor is a good moral stance to go with. And I think that when we understand, you know, uh, loving thy neighbor and we understand hospitality, I think we'll naturally start going towards better outcomes
Oh
as a
yeah.
nation.
Oh yeah.
Like I think if we can start to embrace our differences and say, hey, you know what? Like it would be weird, if I pulled out a thing of water and tried to wash your feet. That would be weird. Like that
That
would be
would be
like,
weird.
bro, like, are you into feet? Like this is a weird foot fetish, right? Like our society has
I think we would
changed.
both be kind of
Yeah, it would be awkward, but
awkward is the word.
yeah, that
Yes.
would be, but I think that the spirit of that though can be done through hugging it out and saying I love you, brother. And so when I say I love you to I'm married to a woman. Uh,
As am I.
we are both married and we both have full-time blue collar jobs.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, I sure would have liked to win the lottery, but it keeps eluding me. But I know we'll get it next time. But I think that I can say to another man, "I love you, brother." And if you use the word brother, and if you really try to fixate on what is brotherhood, what is community,
Hmm.
uh, when you say I love you, it's not sexual in nature. I'm
Right.
not
Yeah.
saying let's go to the bedroom and the wife can watch. I'm just saying that you're my fellow human.
Yep.
And
Well the Bible talks about how Jesus says um uh to greet your brethren with a kiss on the cheek.
yeah,
And if you read in especially in the New Testament, that they do that kind of frequently. I mean, just like when Judas kisses Jesus's cheek, that wasn't out of the ordinary.
yeah,
You embrace somebody and you give them a smooch on the cheek. It's just like a lot of do the whole when they first meet
yeah, yeah,
somebody.
yeah,
It's the same thing.
yeah,
So I think that a lot of people use that against people. It's like, oh, well, community, and we're just going to help each other out, and that's where communism should come in. It's because that's what communism is. We're all just coming together, but
oh yeah,
that's not really how it works,
yeah.
right?
Well, it gets to that whole. Um, I think, yeah, it gets to that whole death of motivation. And then your community collapses because nobody
Yeah,
leaves their home.
right.
Yeah,
And honestly, as I've gotten older, especially getting out of toxic friendships and getting out of toxic work situations and just really getting away and I'm never going to say or advocate for anybody to find themselves in their mid 30s figuring out stuff.
yeah,
It's not the right time to figure out things. So, but a couple years I was able to kind of just start fresh, start over. And I think once I just started to make that choice of, you know what? I'm going to love these people.
yep,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
I tell people, that's what I love about you. That's why I love you.
yeah,
You know, people people say it off the cuff and they say it a lot. So a lot of people doesn't mean anything. But for me, the older I've gotten, the more I like telling people I love them.
yeah,
I like giving people a hug. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, there's not many friends that I meet that I don't give a hug to.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So it's just and the older I get, and you can ask Daisy, especially the past year or so, I've kind of softened up a little bit. You know, I've being right, being stern, and that was something I was also saying earlier about being an atheist. Christians get on that that upper dais type of a thing where it's like we're better than you, and I can't believe you're an atheist, and it's like, I can't believe you just believe in nothing. Like there's just nothing, and it, nowhere is that a way to start a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've often thought like, so I know I am moderate with left leanings, or like I always joked, I'm like, I'm either a liberal conservative or I'm a conservative liberal. Like, because there's so many things I agree with conservatives on, and there's so many things I don't like. It's almost like a 50-50 crapshoot. And so
51-49.
yeah, dude, it's so like it's so bizarre. I know that I'm like, I always joke like I used to actually I voted how I felt. So for every liberal I voted for, I would vote for a conservative. That was literally how I was. I was like, I really believed if I could, I thought that the best policies would be the ones that both parties could agree on.
Yeah.
So I was like, I always want one of each. So I want half my government conservative, half my government to be liberal, because I love the bleeding heart liberal.
Oh yeah.
Like I want bleeding heart liberals. I want liberals that are going to be like, I have all these ideas to try to help mankind. And I love conservatives
So
who
much
say,
empathy
that's great. Who the
and
fuck's going to pay for it?
right.
Like we need to have that tension between our heart screams to do this, but the financial reality tempers it. Right.
Yes.
I've always felt that tension was appropriate. And I think we've gotten away from that as a nation. I'd like to see us return to that natural tension. I miss the days of being called a bleeding heart liberal.
Right.
I do, because I want to. That's what I want to be. I want to be passionate about my fellow mankind, and I also know that some of my ideas need to be reined in by common sense fiscally. Like somebody's got to be like, that's great. Who the fuck's going to pay for it?
Right.
Like, and I think that is such an important conversation, but we're so far afield from that now. It's
Well,
but either
and,
way.
and two, whether you're talking about religion or politics, or if you're just talking about teams,
Yeah.
different sports teams or whatever, it's everything nowadays has become so electric that anything can become a powder keg.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think people are like, there's half of us that are afraid to talk,
Yeah.
and the other half are wanting to talk, but they're afraid to. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, we're ready to listen. Okay, well, we're ready to talk.
Yeah.
We're not telling each other though.
Oh yeah, well, that's one of the things. That's why I think this conversation is going to be so helpful for the both of us. Really is, and for hopefully the audience as
Yeah.
well, is
You guys.
to say that we have two people, a non-believer and a Christian, and all of the online spaces are hostile towards one another.
Yes.
I've never advocated for insulting Christians. I have family who are Christians, so this idea that Christians are stupid, I disagree with. I think there are plenty of very intelligent people that are believers. So how can I say you're stupid? Because you are Christian, it just doesn't make sense to me. And conversely, I don't think atheists are stupid. I think it's literally I am making a claim,
Mm-hmm.
and these are my justifications. And if a person isn't convinced, that's not a failing of that person. It's just, like there's loads of claims. Like we're talking about Mormonism.
Yeah.
Neither one of us is convinced by Mormonism. Is that because there's something, like I'm rejecting it because I just hate it, or am I just not able to force myself to believe something when I just reject the claims? Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
it comes down to, like, again, we've kind of been like hitting on belief quite a bit tonight. It's just saying, like, which is kind of one of the things I was wondering we really talk about tonight, is the difference between a faith claim and a fact claim.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are some things that we can say are true, like 1 + 1 does equal 2. We could say this table exists, this chair exists,
Yeah.
and we can agree to those premises. And we can run tests. If one of
Yeah.
us said, I don't know if this table really is real, I could say, well, let's use our senses.
Yeah.
What do our eyes tell us? What do our fingers, when I touch it, what does that tell us?
Yeah.
Let's get out a tape measure. Let's measure it. Let's do all these things. And, if I take this thing, it's not real, and I ran it into something and I damaged it, well, what caused that damage?
Right.
Or if I, moved it and flipped it over and all our drinks spilled out, well, what did I move? We could run those tests and prove definitively, at least as far as we are real or as able to, that this is a real table. I mean, I don't think it's helpful to think that we're all brains in a vat somewhere just floating in emptiness. So I think that I'm willing to concede this table is real in the real sense.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about like God and saying, I don't question when I sit down in this chair whether this chair is real. I 100% am convinced the chair is real, and I sit down unquestioning. I don't question whether the chair is real. I know it's real, and I live completely with the belief that this chair is real, and when I pull it out and sit on it, I'm going to not fall immediately through the chair because it's an imaginary chair. With God, we are ultimately going from the chair is real fact claim to I believe God is real, or
Mm-hmm.
I disbelieve God is real. Obviously, in my case, disbelief, in his case, belief.
Right.
But when it comes to proofs, it's ultimately going to be in a argumentation case. Like there's no measurement. I can't pull out a microscope. I can't pull out a weight scale and deduce the truth of that claim. It's
Right.
ultimately going to be, Thomas Aquinas's five ways, Anselm of Canterbury's, ontological argument, William Lane Craig's, Kalam cosmological argument, the fine tuning argument, the watchmaker analogy, you know what I mean? So then the question doesn't become, does this thing, it's just really are you convinced, yes or no?
Yeah.
And obviously in my case, the answer is no. In your case, the answer is yes, but I think that's the difference between a belief claim and a fact claim. A belief claim is just something that is unmeasurable
Okay.
that you can, or I'm sorry, I think I said that wrong, backwards. Fact claims are measurable.
Right.
Belief claims are not. So I think that's maybe the difference.
So the one thing is like there's always the burden of proof.
Yeah.
And when I say burden of proof, like in order to convince somebody, there has to be that proof that convinces them, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be um like one of those people that have that coming to Jesus moment where it was like everything opens up and they
Oh,
hear the
yeah.
angels singing and God speaks to them, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, then you've got other people that can read it and just reading the Bible so
Yeah.
one thing is is I think with a lot of people with atheists is they're not willing to sit down with them. First off, not a whole lot of Christians are willing to talk to atheists,
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
right? And it's just because it's such a stark contrast, right?
Yeah.
But it's because a lot of people aren't actual atheists.
Yeah.
If you look at the term atheist, it means you don't believe there's no God, there's no nothing.
Yeah.
You believe in nothing, right? Well, when you really boil it down, even if they don't believe in the traditional like the Christian God or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that they're not like you.
Yeah.
That they haven't been reading and they haven't been looking and they haven't been searching and you've been reading and searching and you haven't been able to find anything that really convinces you truly, but you haven't given up.
Yeah.
So and maybe with me and you, maybe something will convince you.
Yeah.
You don't know, but I think that's where Christians go wrong is they go about it. First off, they go about it the wrong way. That I don't know what it was about that whole hellfire and brimstone thing from like the 80s to now. It's just shoving that down your throat didn't really, you know,
Yeah.
didn't really work out the way, kind of like the whole No Child Left Behind. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can push everybody graduation across that stage, but having that diploma doesn't mean anything. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So one thing about it is okay. Like, what if you were to look at the story of the Ark, right?
Okay.
Now, if you go to Mount Ararat, just like if you go to Mount Everest, there's clam, there's all kinds of fossilized
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
sea life,
yeah,
right? And if you go to Mount Ararat and you kind of look where the Bible says they have found, have you seen that where they found what they believe to be
yeah, yeah,
where the ark rested? Now
yeah,
let's say that they measure the wood and it's everything and it is. Would that be proof for you, or would that just prove, because every religion and every people believe that there was some sort of great flood.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
in everything.
yeah,
So proving that there's a boat
yeah,
would that
yeah.
really prove?
So I know what you're talking about. So uh there's several problems with believing in a literal worldwide flood.
Hmm.
So the reason why we have flood stories in so many people, and this is something that Frank Turek likes to ask, because his when people are like, you don't really believe in a worldwide flood, and he's like, well, where all the stories come from, is his rebuttal. So the stories come from the fact that 99% of all humans have to live within walking distance of fresh water.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like when you bring up a map of America and you see all that red, and you're like, how can this much of America vote for conservatives, yet these little blue spots, vote for liberals, and they're able to control all this stuff, right?
Right.
It speaks to a conspiracy, right? But if you were to take that same overlay and put people, all of a sudden it makes sense,
Right.
because it's always been people vote liberal, land votes conservative, right? So, and I've always taken it from the viewpoint of urban versus rural.
Yeah.
I think that urban centers are going to see more bang for their money on taxes. Rural areas aren't.
Right.
So that's why we have this kind of, why you see in rural areas a lot of red voters, and why in urban areas you see a lot of blue voters. To me, that's just common sense.
Yeah.
But for to go to the flood, uh, everybody's living on natural freshwater sources, because they need fresh water. You can't go to the ocean and just drink water, you'll die.
Right.
So all of humanity is living next to these sources of water, and every single source of water is prone to flooding. Every single one of them.
Hmm.
So the reason why is because, think about it. How far do you want to walk for your fresh water every day? If you say to yourself, I'm going to found a village, and, for farming, if you look at the Egyptian Nile, or if you want to look at when I was in Habania, all the farmland goes right up to the river's edge, right? And they farm about a mile in, and then you start having the village itself, and then there is a line, there's a couple of weeds, and all of a sudden, desert. It's very weird to see such lush greenery, then you turn around and there's desert. It's a very weird thing to see when I was in Iraq. And for those of you who know, Habaniya is where I was deployed when I went to Iraq. I think that if you have severe flooding, though, all your all your plants die, right? Because the flood waters comes in. All of a sudden, you don't have food for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long it takes for those crops to regrow. And if your granary isn't back far enough and it gets washed away, you might have mass starvation. It's going to
Right.
be a really bad event. And that's not even your houses being flooded. We
Right.
saw what happened in Katrina,
Right.
right? Devastating, the city of New Orleans.
Right.
We see these things happen, right? And this is pre, like, more modern meteorological data, so they have no understanding of why it flooded. Like, if we were like, okay, so if 2,000 years ago we were living here and Helene caused all the massive flooding in our area,
Yeah.
we live in Western North Carolina, uh we would be like, we live in the mountains. How is there flooding in the mountains?
Right.
This is clearly divine, right? So I think when we talk about, like, where do all the flood stories come from, that's where it's coming from, is
Yeah,
these kind
but
of
not
events,
necessarily
you
because
know.
the mountains. I mean, there's lakes up on mountains,
Yeah,
and when it rains, it you
yeah,
know
But that's
So,
my point is that anytime there's a devastating enough flood,
okay,
there's going to be a attribution of we're going to
yeah,
invoke the
but
divine.
it would
Same with plagues. We did the same with plagues.
yeah
We did it with every natural disaster. If it was significant enough, it will generate a God is a like even with Katrina.
yeah, but
People believe Katrina was an
yeah,
act
but
of God
I'm
because they're a
talking
sinful
about
city.
the complete flooding of the earth, right?
Yeah,
Is it not funny though that every single society, right,
yeah,
that had no contact with each other,
yeah,
all believed that there was this great flood? Now, to me, I think that's kind of weird.
yeah,
You have people that are on far sides of the earth that have no way to communicate with each other,
yeah,
but yet they also talk about this great flood.
yeah.
Now,
Well,
I think that I can see what you're
yeah,
saying,
yeah, yeah.
but I think to me that just that's an awful big coinkydink.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I'm
And
not saying that
right,
you're absurd for,
no, 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 and I'm not,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it really goes to you have to, you have to believe what the Bible says.
Okay.
That's really the story.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? In order to believe the claim, okay, because the claim is the whole earth was covered in water.
yeah,
Everything died,
yeah,
even the fish.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Everything died.
yeah,
Very hard to imagine, because even like let's say something was to flood, a whole country was to flood like 10 feet, right?
yeah.
It would wipe out everything. So it's
It'd be
like,
pretty devastating for a lot of, yeah. If the oceans rose 10 feet, it would be very devastating. Like for here in North Carolina, we would our new oceanfront property would be in like the Piedmont section, the middle of our
right.
state. Yeah,
So let's say that that was to happen, whatever.
yeah,
So you can say, oh well, like okay, well everybody died. I can see how the fish could die because of getting against the rocks or
yeah,
because of fresh water and they were salt water, whatever. But why the whole earth?
yeah.
That's the one thing I've always kind of wondered.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
why is it that all these stories talk about the whole earth being flooded and not just their one spot? Because like what you said is absolutely true. The Nile,
yeah,
like everybody's right here.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you can look at Google Map and just look at where everybody's living along the Nile. Like that it's you have this one sliver, you have this big river,
Yep.
and then you have a lot of greenery running right along it, and you can't miss it. Bright tan orange desert immediately separating everything else. It is, it's fun to look
Yeah,
at,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Like
I bet
it
it
is,
is. Just the
like just look at it
contrast,
on Google
just
Maps.
the
It's
vast.
very, but I think that when your home is devastated by a flood,
Mhm.
um, I think it is a deeply painful and personal experience. Like I experienced flooding. Our mutual good friend
Yeah.
experienced really, really significant flooding. And I actually had when I was truck driving, I actually had a delivery about an hour and a half west and north from here in an area that was absolutely devastated. Like when I say devastated, I mean houses were picked up, spun around and dropped off in other places, and their houses were obliterated.
Yeah.
Like their whole home was gone. And I'll tell you, if I came home and my house, like while I was at work, burnt down or a flood took it or that devastation, would be deeply, it would feel like, like that isolation, right?
Right.
Like we have the internet now. Back then they didn't. So
Yeah.
I think they may have felt that it was this massive flood. And
And and
we'll,
and
and
and two, like, and also it could be one of those things to where it's always a timeline,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Just because if the Chinese said it, like the whole earth flooded, and it was 200 years after like the Hebrews, and
yeah,
it's so many. Maybe it's this thing of a story that just spread. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I mean, because this is my thing, like if all of a sudden everybody was gone, right, and I was like the only person left in my area, because you got to remember, there's no way to communicate with each other,
Yeah.
right? And all of a sudden, everything that you know of, as far as you know, is gone. Everybody you know is gone. Your town's gone. For as far as you can walk is
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
You would believe that the earth has been flooded, wouldn't you?
Yeah. If
And that you were
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
by
yeah.
miracle
Yeah, I would
survived.
if I if I experienced this, like I was stuck in a raft kind of
Mm-hmm.
insanity
Yep.
situation, and then the water dissipated and I'm going around, everything's devastation, I can't find anybody.
Right.
Yeah, I and that kind of leads to my point, like, I think that I don't think these people made this story, like it's quite possible that we had people go up in the mountains around Mount Ararat
Yeah.
and they found these fossils you're talking about. And
Yeah.
these are 2000 years ago. You know, I understand that there was a period of time where the whole world was covered in the ocean. It's like 3 million years, or not 3 million, but like 3 billion years ago.
Right.
There was a period of time where the world was covered in ocean. And there was a period of time where the mountains, or the earth, the literal earth that now makes up the Himalayas and the, Mount Ararat, uh, used to be at some point underwater before plate tectonics
Right.
ran into each other and pushed that earth and those fossils up.
Right.
So uh, the fossils, like we have naturalistic explanations. And then for the Mount Ararat, I think, and I'll double check this, but I think there's two possible Mount Ararats. But there is one that does look, from like a bird's eye, it does look like a boat, like the one you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But the measurements are way off. Like, and then two, they have actually gone there, because here's the thing: any proofs out, especially out of the Old Testament, you best believe the Israelis are all about proving it. So if that was the literal ark, you best believe the Israelis would have been screaming it at the top of their lungs, proclaiming the truth of it. And yet they've mapped the mountain completely. It's just the way that mountain looks. It's the measurements are way off. Like, we have a fairly decent idea of how big the ark is supposed to be in this book, and we'll get to it when we
Yeah.
actually get to the flood. But and then we also have another problem, another incest problem again. So,
Yeah.
like, if we take the Bible literally, we have an incest problem with Adam and Eve. Like, who exactly is the children of Adam and Eve having children with and making mankind? Who exactly was Cain having sex with? Like, all of these would have been his sisters. It would have just been sister and brotherly love everywhere, because that's all the humans are. And then and then post flood, we literally have just Noah, his wife, his three sons, their wives, and that's it. There's just not enough genetic diversity to explain what we see on life. So and
Okay.
we're also dealing with from a literalistic timeline. We're looking at, if we were to take the Bible literally, we're looking at a 6,000 year time period. So if we have Noah and his three sons and their wives, we're going to assume all of them are Middle Eastern descent. So we can't explain Chinese, blacks, Native Americans. We lose
Tower of
all
Babel.
explanatory
Tower of
power of
Babel
that.
was afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. But post flood, the issue is that he struck down the Tower of Babel and he confused languages. And so, yeah, we can say, like, we can point to different lineages splintering off there, but we can't explain the Aborigines in Australia. Can't explain the Native Americans in America. You can't explain Northeast, or I'm sorry, South Pacific Islanders. You can't explain Eskimos, right? And again, we can't even explain different color skins. Like, if we were to say God struck the Tower of Babel and he confused our language and he also changed the colors of everybody. But if my memory on the Tower of Babel, it's just language. He just changes the language. He doesn't change their little skin colors
Right.
either.
But but that's humans evolved
Yeah, yeah.
though.
Right, but
So
we're by saying that humans evolved,
right
we are dismissing the literalist interpretations
of
of the Bible. We can't say there was a flood 4,000 years ago
mhm.
and it killed everybody except for Noah,
Well, we
his
know that
wife, his three sons, and their
well
wives.
we know that Noah and his wife were of Middle Eastern descent, right?
Yeah.
But they never tell us of. They don't really talk about his three sons,
Well, if
and they
they're
don't
Middle
talk
Eastern, we
about
would
his
assume the sons are
three.
Middle Eastern.
Right, but
Yeah.
they never talk about his three wives, about the wives.
Yeah.
So the wives could have been something different,
Yeah.
and it could be something too that the Chinese and all those things came up as time progressed. Because if the Middle East is like right here, China's over here, Russia's over here, and all of us is
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah, but we're trying to rebuild the entire human race from a couple of ancestors in a 4,000 year time period.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is that when we talk about evolution in religious contexts, uh, if we acknowledge evolution is real, the issue is we're also dealing with the fact that there's not enough genetic diversity to explain what we see in humankind from just 4,000 years ago. Not enough time has emerged for black people in Africa to form. Like the reason why black people in Africa are black is because they're exposed to more sunlight, so they need more melanin in their skin
Yes.
in order to survive in Africa. And the
And the
reason
reason
why
why
white people in Europe
I'm
are,
white with red hair is
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the sun doesn't
But
shine where we come from.
so when we're looking at humanity and the different skin colors, we're talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And the problem is if we're taking the Bible literally, we lose explanatory power for Native Americans, Australians, Aborigines,
No,
Eskimos.
Native
We lose.
Americans are just so a
Right, but
native.
how did they get there? That's my question. If
Well,
we're going to have to assume that
so
Noah is on the ark and they're literally floating around all over the world, and their wives are having oddly mixed race babies, and then they're dropping those babies off. Those babies bloom into survivable human. You know what I mean? And when you read the and again we'll get into this more there's just they don't talk about, like, there's just not enough time for any of that to really take place. So that's why I'm saying we lose. Yeah, I'm fine with having a metaphysical conversation about the flood.
yeah,
Like, I'm perfectly fine saying, well, what is the metaphysics of a worldwide flood? What is the writers trying to get at? What are we trying? We're talking about the eventual culmination of sin upon the earth, and what is that? How do we cleanse that, and how do we deal? You know what I mean? I'm perfectly fine with going down that path, but in a literalistic lens, if to take it literally from a flood event from 4,000 years ago, I think that we run into very powerful evidence against a worldwide flood.
okay. Well, then you could also use the same claim as in the New Testament when Jesus feeds the 5,000 with just the loaves and the fishes. Well, it says there was 5,000 men. More than likely, they also had their wives and children there, so there could have been easily 15,000 people there. So how would you say that all those people actually got fed? If you just have two loaves and fishes, or however many it was, there's only but so much. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
yeah, yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah,
So it's one of those things to where you got to have the faith. Now we can read whenever we get to that point
yeah,
about Noah and them, because there's like the book of Enoch talks about a lot of things that happened before the flood, um, and like it's like Noah tells his sons to go out and to be fruitful and multiply, but actually he also is telling them that that there's a lot of things that happen.
yeah.
You got the Nephilim, which are these angel human hybrids.
Yes.
That was the actual reason why God flooded the earth. It wasn't because the sin. Yes, sin had to happen, but it was because the men were the angels were having these children,
Yeah.
and it was they were hundreds of feet tall and they were eating people, and it was devastating. And so God sent the flood, and that Noah and his sons, that he sent his sons out to actually go find their lands, right? Tells them to go find their kingdoms. Well, as they're doing that, they're actually going out to um, find any evidence of the angel, whatever fallen angel technology was left over, whether it be tablets or it be strong, stone structures or whatever that for go out, and then when they find it to tell him, because that was one thing that God didn't want.
Okay.
I know it sounds like a lot. It's
No,
probably
yeah,
far
yeah.
fetched in a little way.
No, like, uh, you know, um, some of what you're saying I have read and am following along, and some of it I'll have to read some more because some of it just isn't familiar to me. But um, like, but my point is to say that I'm perfectly fine with um talking about this, metaphysically or literarily, or what is the author trying to communicate to us. I think that is going to be where you and I are going to find the most common ground. Like I said, I'm you know obviously as a skeptic or as a non-believer, obviously, like, I've been exposed to these miracle claims,
Yeah.
and so from my perspective, when I hear these, there's reasons why I don't accept the miracle claims
Right.
as truths,
Right.
uh but it's not, you know and that's why I guess, um again, it's like my earlier point about being like, I don't need to believe Jesus walked on water in order to believe that, loving thy neighbor is a good thing.
Right.
When somebody strikes you, turn and offer them the other cheek. You and I have talked about my stance on guns. I'm not against you owning guns. I just won't ever have a gun again.
Well,
And I'm perfectly, I think genuinely, if somebody broke into my house and people are like, what are you going to do? I'm just going to be as hospitable as I can be, and, rely on the police. And if they shoot me, they shoot me. But I'm not capable anymore of that level of violence again.
right.
Like, I have my reasons, and I just won't do it. And and I know that may be naive and it may be childish and, all these other things, but for me and where I stand, I in my the ways I derive my mankind has intrinsic value, while it's not because we're made in the image of God. I have a different, I have a scarcity model, which is how I come to a position of man has intrinsic value. um, and um, but that's not to say that my stances must be your stances,
Oh yeah,
or that my
absolutely.
experiences ought to be your experiences. But I think, like I said, I can come to these conclusions without believing in, miracles, and I can definitely be enlightened by Jesus and
Yeah.
by, Paul, and by um, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and by Abraham. One of the things that's I know that Soren Kierkegaard. I've been reading Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard, and I'm arguing with him on every page. But one of the things that I like about him is the emotional. Like, he gets the emotions pretty well. But you know, one of the central stories that a lot of people get to is the sacrifice of Isaac. God's commandment, and where we're talking about objective morality. But an interesting thing to see here is that there's quite possibly, at the time the story came out, uh, people were sacrificing their children to the gods,
Yeah.
and that this tradition was even a part of the Hebrew belief, way back when.
Oh yeah.
Now, that's a theory, may not be true, but there is a theory that, the early Hebrews were, doing child sacrifice, and that child sacrifice was a human norm of the time, and that the story of the binding of Isaac is actually a radical movement away from child sacrifice. And it was giving us a religious story to show that instead of sacrificing our sons, because all firstborns belong to God, we can, in lieu of that, sacrifice a ram instead, and
Right.
so the story of Abraham, you know, binding Isaac and the attempted sacrifice is actually not, God being this great immoral monster. It's actually a story that is trying to move us away from, you know, sacrificing our firstborn sons and saying, hey,
Right.
there's a better way. And that better way is let's sacrifice a ram. And our sons still belong to God. Our
Right.
firstborn still belong to God. But uh, the ram can be sacrificed in lieu of,
Right.
so you're still honoring the Lord our God, but we are doing so, like, we're still showing that respect. We're still showing that sacrifice where, we can't eat the ram. it's
Right.
it's God's now. We've lost that property, so we are suffering, in this way, but it is still a gift because we're taking something from us and giving it to the divine. But in this way, we are still respecting God. And so it's a radical shift away from. So we could say that, in that reading, instead of being so hyped up on what the Bible has said, it could also be that we should take focus on what the Bible has done. So in that story, it has moved man from, sacrificing their firstborn to a greater place that is sacrifice a ram instead. Because I think we would both agree that if a man killed his firstborn child simply to give as an offering to any being, much
Yeah.
less the Abrahamic God, we would say that's not a good thing. That's not a moral thing. Like we've moved as a society or as a humanity in our moral spaces away from
Oh, yeah,
that.
very much. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm like. I guess that's why I'm saying, like, I don't, I can rationalize those those things, and I can definitely hear these stories from our ancestors, and
Hmm.
I can see where they were at, and I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to move to a better place, which is what we're doing now. So I feel like I can relate to these guys. I can
Yeah.
relate to our ancestors who are writing these books, and I would be foolish to say that the Bible hasn't had at least a profound effect upon Western society. I may, you know, say the words Greco-Roman to contribute more to it, but I would still say Greco-Roman with Judeo-Christian
Well, if it
put
wouldn't
into
have
it.
been for the Romans and the Greeks killing Christians, uh, it probably would have never spread.
There's a lot of things. So I know, I sent you the Xenophanes
Hmm.
stuff today. Um, and I think studying Xenophanes will help us understand the spread of Christianity north into Turkey and west into Greece and into Rome.
Hmm.
I think that we'll have some really interesting discussions about um, uh, some really. I found, like, his writings, those the fragments. Did you read the fragments link? It's a
Hmm.
really quick read. It's like, it almost looks like 2 pages, almost like if you read it back, front and back. That's not a lot of fragments of the man left. But I was surprised reading about a man who lived between 400 and 500 uh, BC, uh, having those words, especially coming from a pagan, uh, uh, like we live in the Bible Belt, he lived in the pagan belt. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So for somebody to have, I think, such radical views, there was really interesting, and it gives you insight also into life at that time, so 2,500 years ago, people thought rainbows were gods, were actual, that is a god. When you see a rainbow, you're witnessing a god, and here comes Xenophanes going, no, it's just a trick of light. Gods aren't made of material things because material things are not perfect, and he's
Right.
kind of starting to kind of, and I was blown away that 2,500 years ago, when he's talking about where the origin of air, it's coming from the ocean, which
Yeah.
actually is true. Like, our air motions do come from, the
Yeah.
rising, the sun coming down on the sun beating down on the ocean, water evaporating up, and and that's causing air to
Yeah.
flow. So I was blown away. Like, he got there probably through just, observation, but um it's interesting that he was able to make that observation in the first place, to even realize like um that along rivers, because I experienced, like, I was, in Habania, you had the Euphrates running right there. It's like, I could feel the air coming off of it. It always
Yeah.
felt amazing because it's fucking hot in the desert, just
Oh
so you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but it
Thanks for
was, it
telling
was,
me. I didn't know
I
that.
know you didn't know that, but
I didn't know
it
that.
was really Captain Obvious moment. It was really like, it's still profound that he was just through simple observation able to kind of figure this out. And he had no idea about evaporation. No, I like, you know what I mean? Evaporation wasn't on the
Right.
radar. Like, no idea. We don't know where the water came from. It just does, we don't know
Yeah.
clouds. But the idea is that he realized, wow, it's really windy during storms. It's windy along rivers. It's windy on the ocean. It's the ocean that's, and since all water runs into oceans, it's the ocean that is the great generator of wind in the world.
Yeah.
And so he starts saying, like, and he's saying, like, you guys are envisioning man as God. And that's why it's not that he's criticizing the anthropomorphization of gods. Like, I think if we were to say what would God look like, I would think it would be a blinding light, but I don't think God would be physical, as in that's physical, this is physical. I
No.
think it would be a spiritual blinding light. Like, if you were to say, James, envision God, that's how I envision it
Yeah.
would be some kind of amorphous, like, meaning, like, it wouldn't be like this,
Yeah.
because when it says we're made in the image of God, I've often wondered, I don't think that's actually meant literally. I think it's meant uh uh spiritually. Like, if, let's presuppose God is real, and let's presuppose that we are made in his image. You know, if I was to take that literally, uh I'm thinking, well, man and woman, there's some differences there,
Right.
so is God like what we imagine Slanesh from 40K to look like? And I'm like, nah, dude, no, that's no, nope. I
Nah.
immediately deny thee, Slanesh. But immediately I'm thinking, I don't think God's talking about the physical. And then when we talk about in heaven there is neither male nor female, there's no master nor slave,
Yeah.
you know all are one with, the divine, with Christ. I think that, when I think about that, I'm wondering, I don't think this physical is what we're talking about when we say we're made in the image of God. I think that, again, presupposing it's all true, I would say that, this is a spiritual familiarity. It's small flame, infinite flame.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
still flame.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, or light. It's big, blinding. I can't look at it. I can't even conceive of it. Light, little light. But it's
Little
light
match.
is light. So there would be that similarity. Only obviously with God, it's to the infinite degree, and with us, it's to a finite degree. But I would say, when God said, "I have made you in my image," I think it's that's what he's talking about. And even uh Paul, in his writings, sorry, I had a moment where I thought Peter. No, I am correct. It's Paul. Sorry. I That's what that look was. I had this
Peter?
moment of,
Oh.
like, was it Paul? No, it was Paul. I'm the Pauline letters. I'm dumb. I think when he's talking about, what kind of bodies we would have post resurrection, post rapture, I don't think he's talking about us being able to recognize one another the way we currently do. Like, I see big man Josh with the red beard and the red hair. That
Yeah.
must be my friend Josh. Instead, I would see a light amorphous being, and I would intrinsically know, like in the way of dreams, that that is Josh. Like, I
That's a
would
good way to. Yeah.
or you could think of the little spirits in Dragon Ball Z, like, and I know it's comical, but I'm saying, like, I think that's actually like a fairly, like, they're kind of like little balls with like slightly little legs and slight little arms, and but there's no features, and it's like one of those things. Do I have to take a poop? Like when I'm, do I, like, am I gonna have to poop when I'm dead? Like, post rapture, like post resurrection, am I gonna have to poop in my perfect body? I think like Paul would laugh out loud, kind of like how you are. I think he would just be like, "Nah, dude, here, is that no?" It's like you're made in the image of God. Does that mean God has a butthole? Like you start immediately having these kind of like really silly questions, but I think it shows the absurdity. Does God fart? Like I think
Right,
that we
right,
we're gonna say, okay, now this is not the divine image. This inside
right.
the spirit within,
Yeah,
that's the divine image. And as Jordan Peterson would famously ask, I don't know what that means. Does that mean my rational self? Does it mean my emotional state? Does it mean, I don't know. But I mean, those are like when we're asking these questions, I often, or not ask these questions, but when we're having these discussions, um, I think, like I said, I think the I can only go so far with it.
yeah,
And I think even Paul, that's where some of his frustration comes in. He's like, one, y'all are asking all the wrong questions. You're so focused on the wrong things. And I feel like sometimes, like when you're saying to me, and what I've heard from others, a lot of times it's like you're just asking the wrong questions. And ultimately, I'm not so vain or arrogant to say that that's not true. It could very well be the case that I'm just not asking the right questions. It could very well be that I'm just not, I'm willing to concede that I haven't found the right path, or I haven't found, and so this is why I try very hard to stay with the 80-20 rule.
yeah,
I try to say, look, I'm 80% convinced that material determinism with a sprinkling of truly random events, like, we see in nuclear radiation, actual literal decay, not the decay rates, but the actual moment that like that is foundationally, I think that there is some, I don't know how determinism and truly random acts coexist. I don't know. I'm not a physicist. I don't
yeah,
know. I'm not that level of genius, so I'm sorry, guys. But I'm like 80% convinced of material determinism. But are there some wonky things? Are, like, we talk about consciousness in a material deterministic world. How does consciousness arise? Again, to me, all I hear is, William Paley's clockmaker analogy. And while I don't have the answer, I do suspect a naturalistic, but that in itself is a leap for me to make. So it's same with like the fine tuning argument. I think just as evolution and trying to understand how all these finely tuned ecosystems were ultimately explained by Darwin and really his predecessors. Like he started the movement and then they developed a better and better idea of evolution. I think that there is a future person who's going to figure out like cosmology, and it'll be from these naturalistic causes. I suspect that to be the case, but I acknowledge that that is a leap. I am making a leap of faith
right.
that there is going to be a scientist on the level of not Dawkins, but Darwin, who's going to do for cosmology what Darwin did for uh, these finely tuned ecosystems. But again, that comes back to belief, right? It comes back to uh, I can hear the argument saying you're making this giant leap, right? And we can say, well, why don't you Occam's razor it? If one door is God and one door is this giant cosmological Darwinism or Darwin-ish figure that's off in the future, why not just choose the Christian door? Why not just choose the God door? And that just gets back to our conversation about the table and the chair. You know, I am utterly convinced these things are real, but can I force myself to believe in something that I don't Like it's like trying to force myself to believe in Santa Claus in a
Yeah.
literal, not in the metaphysics of Santa Claus, but in the literal physical manifestation of a man flying around on flying reindeer once every year to deliver presents, literal physical presents to children that are good and cold to children that are bad. Uh, and I know that Santa Claus makes a lot of Christians upset when it's brought up, but it's not meant to be harmful. It's just to show that you can't make yourself believe in a literal Santa Claus as a rational adult, like post belief.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't retroactively convince yourself of those truths
Right.
or those truths. You would, you can maybe say the words, you can maybe every Christmas night, like, please, Santa, please don't give me a piece of coal. I've tried to be a good boy. Please put presents under my tree. In the name of Santa Claus, amen. Right? I could say the words,
Yeah.
but there's no way I can force myself to believe them.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
just like you couldn't. So it gets back to that question of like, it comes down to with belief claims versus fact claims. I'm just not convinced of the arguments. And when it comes to evidential claims thus far, so far, the naturalistic evident or claim or responses seem to be more compelling to me than the belief, the faith claims or
Yeah.
the faith, evidences. I think that the fact that the Bible exists at all
It's crazy.
is evidence of there being some truth value. So I don't 100% agree with the notion that claims aren't evidence. I think that claims generate from somewhere. It's one of those beliefs that every story has some truth somewhere in it. Like the flood story. Uh, I think that there was a flood. And there is actually evidence, I think like 10,000 years ago, there was this very significant flood in Mesopotamia. And so it's quite possible that from oral tradition and from that devastating act, who knows how bad it was for the tribes living there, but they
Sure.
may have come away from that and said, always be scared of the water.
Right.
If it's happened once, it can happen again. So they have this story where they tell their kids and their kids tell their kids and their kids tell their kids on and on for the next 5,000-6,000 years before finally somebody goes, I can make a brick. Let's build a building. And all of a sudden civilization gets founded.
Yeah.
But they have the 6,000-year-old or 5,000-year-old story about
Right.
floods. And it's, through the telephone game of 5,000 years of human
Right.
history, we've got this more intricate story. But what is their ancestors trying to tell them? Their ancestors are saying, look, guys, floods can be devastating and ruinous and can be full of death. Like all these people died when this
Yeah.
happened. And so there's this, hey, but hey, look, like we still had kids. There was still life after it. The rainbow, is a sign that, it's so beautiful. Obviously, since we survived, obviously the gods or God, still found something redeeming about us that they didn't decide to just kill us all.
Right.
So I can see these things coming. And when we read the Epic of Gilgamesh, when we hit Noah's Ark, I'm going to show you kind of the parallels. So that way you can at least see. I think that when we talk about where that story is coming from, I think that story is coming from a real event. I think there really was a flood. I don't think it was worldwide, but I do think it was a real event. That there was a very significant flood in Mesopotamia. The archaeological evidence seems to support it. And then on top of that, it makes sense that people who survived it would be very traumatized by it. And they would make this very, and when I say make, they would have genuinely, their heart of hearts, thought that the god or gods had done this. And so it wouldn't have been, an inauthentic creation story.
Right.
I think so. They would have said, okay, we survived. What does that mean? We just had this flood. Well, we don't they had no understanding how floods work,
Yeah.
but they saw all this devastation, all this horror. and they're trying to make sense of it. And obviously, like it's all throughout human history. It's always been the gods. Every time something crazy, and it's always justified, right? We always deserve it, you know.
Yeah.
And
We're
it's
such nihilist.
well, it's I know I'm not a perfect being. I know that I make a mistake every day. I've yet to live a perfect life
It's
or
just
even a
that
perfect day.
guilty,
Yeah,
like something's like,
yeah.
you know,
And it's one of those things where, like it could have just been like I thought about somebody, not my wife, and I feel
right?
bad about it, and I shouldn't have thought about a different woman. I should only think about my wife in that way, or heaven forbid something worse, and I
Yeah,
don't want to project, but we are
yeah, that's
humans and we sin,
right.
and uh, and again, I don't even think I can live a perfect day where I am a perfect human in one single day. So I could see like something disastrous happening and saying to myself, well, the gods are punishing me because I know I've done wrong
Yeah,
and I know my fellow man has done wrong. So the gods are trying to punish us. And what's the point of punishment? To teach us something. So and these stories can evolve from these ways and saying, well, the moral of the lesson is God has to wipe away and start anew, and the filth of humanity. And so I think that's it's people who have this event, they truly believe in gods or God, and they're trying to, like, in that framework, trying to figure it out. And I think that's where these stories come from. But uh is it possible there was a worldwide flood? Sure. I mean, with God all things are possible. And unless you have anything, I think that's actually a great way to stop tonight.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think we talked about a lot of different things,
Yeah, we.
and yeah, well, we all brought it back together. It's all
Yeah.
about faith, and I will say this: as a believer, as a Christian, I the Bible has said it so many times in the Old and New Testament how easy it is to become a believer, right? The Bible says, whosoever call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Um, Jesus says only to believe in me, right? So I think a lot of people, and I'm talking Baptists are just as bad, that you get caught up on all the intricate nuances and of everything that goes on with being a Christian, because being a Christian means to be Christ-like.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, has nothing to do about the Bible, but talks about being Christ-like. You don't have to believe the whole Bible. You don't have to believe any of that. The only thing you have to believe is Jesus. So, and like I said, I mean, I see a lot of people get hung up on, well, you got to give, and you got the Bible never really says how much to give. It just says to give charitably, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's not really that complicated. It's just people have made it more complicated,
Yeah.
and I think people have made it more complicated to either make themselves seem smarter, or it's just because of people are just like, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
It's not. Is it really this that easy? And I think as a human, just you just gotta believe. That's it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That goes against human nature completely. Because our caveman ancestors are like, it's clear out there. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, is it though?
Yeah.
Like, is
Yeah.
it? Hey, Billy didn't come back. I
Yeah.
guess it wasn't clear. You know.
Yeah.
And so like I said, it's not really it's not really complicated. And it's like what you're talking about with Paul and his was it Paul that wrote to the churches of Asia,
Well,
or was
the
that Peter?
letters that I'm aware of, like the Pauline letters, but what was it? I think I don't think it was Paul actually that when the first Christian missionaries went to China,
Yeah,
there's a very famous interaction there between the current emperor at the time and this, you know, and at this time China's very old and they have this massive kingdom and they have the silk trades going on.
yeah,
So they're very wealthy, they're very powerful, and they have this massive kingdom. And his response is, if this was true, why are we just now finding out about this? You know, and he's like, look at all
Yeah.
this that we've done.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that this incredible miracle happened where again? In their view, it would have been West Virginia.
Yeah.
You're telling me that in Whitesville, West Virginia, this incredible miracle occurred, like earth shatter. And how long ago was this? Hundreds of, and it's just now, you're just now telling me. So for him, he was just like, okay, sure. Yeah, I believe you.
Yeah.
It was just, so I don't know. I'll have to double check. So internet, we'll double check. But I don't know. I'll have to look into letters to China to see if there was a.
Well,
That's the only interaction I'm aware of with Christianity and
well, I know
China.
that, and I know it's one of the two, Peter or Paul, because he writes to the 7 churches of Asia.
Well, like Asia Minor, like to Turkey.
Maybe.
Okay.
I know. It's either Peter or Paul, because he talks to he's writing letters to the churches.
Yeah. Well, I know Paul is writing, like his Pauline letters are all to Christian churches.
Okay. So it's like Paul was writing to the
like First Corinthians and
like
Thessalonians
Paul was talking to them like you're focusing on the wrong things.
Oh yeah. When he was, especially when he was in Rome, he was really like, when people kept asking about what kind of bodies are we going to have, that's what I was saying. He was really like, y'all are asking way
that's what I'm saying. Questions. And people make things just too complicated.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and so but like I said, that's me. There's a lot of Christians that don't believe that. There's a lot of Christians that don't believe that just believing in Jesus is what will save you. And then why else did he die? I don't know. That to me makes the whole Bible just mute. Really, is like, well, then why even?
Just put the resurrection story in and toss the rest out.
Yeah, it's like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so that clearly that's but whatever. But yeah, I think that's a really good stopping point.
Yeah.
I had a good time. I thought it was great. It's 2 hours.
2 hours and 11 minutes. So it's
a lot of talking.
Yeah, but that's all it's going to be is long format.
It is.
And I know we're a little squirrely, but we're going to get better at this. This is episode 1. And yeah. Because episode 1 was
was just practice.
Yeah, it ended up being practice, and this we'll be a little more refined, but again, it's 4/8/2026, and so the reality is that we're after work, and it's always a little hard to be hyper focused when you're also dealing with a full day's worth of labor, and you're just like, I'm a little tired. But either way,
especially at 15 to 10.
Yeah, it's a little late. So but
I gotta get home.
I know Daisy's gonna be like, y'all are talking so much.
Yeah, because last time I got home, it was like almost midnight.